Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're really grateful to have you all here once again. We're grateful and we really look forward to giving you the real best of our meetups every time. So, without taking much of our time, we're going to look at choosing the right chart for your data with Yan. So, I hope I'm calling the names right. So, but I'll go ahead to introduce our group, our local group here, where the Abuja, our user group, and our ladies Abuja. These are two communities founded to accomplish the aim of the R consortium in bringing together a community of R users, and both from the professional side as well as the academics. So we're doing all this through our meetups and workshops that we organize, and we're really grateful. We're doing our best to give back to the community. So I'm Bilikisu Olatunji. I'm the founder of these two groups here in Abuja, Nigeria. And I have wonderful people who are supporting the group as well, who are co-organizing the events every time. So we're grateful to all of them. And we're also grateful to our members for their support, both locally, all over Nigeria, and all over the world, because we couldn't have been pushing forward without everybody. We couldn't have been doing that. So we're really grateful. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go to our speaker. Um, his name is Yan Yan Holtz. Did I get it right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. So he's a data analyst, a software engineer, and a data visualization specialist. So as a professional, Yan helps companies and researchers analyze their data sets, covering all stages from pre-processing to communicating results. Additionally, Yan is the co-author of several educational websites such as data2viz.com, R Graph Gallery, and the Productive R Workflow. I'm really honored to have you here, Yan. I've learned a lot from you, and I know so many people here. They've been blessed with a lot of your articles, and we're really grateful. I've benefited so much, especially the R Graph Gallery. That's the secret of copying codes. We've learned a lot from it, and I'm really grateful, as well as your post on LinkedIn. And most especially, I'm grateful that it was so easy to get you. I reached out to you. I got a reply immediately, and I'm really honored to have you. Thank you so much. And please help me to welcome Yan. Thank you. So I'll allow you to share the screen.
And all right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Can you see my screen? Are we all good? I guess we are. All right. Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a real pleasure to come and talk about data visualization and R because I just love it a lot. And thank you for coming to and listening to me. I'm very grateful for that. So today we're going to talk about data visualization mainly and about R a little bit. And it's going to talk a lot about one of my projects called Data2Viz. And basically, the idea is to give you the process I use to go from one dataset to one great chart. So basically, how to go from one to the other. To give you a little bit of context about who I am, I've been working in academia for a few years in several research institutes, and then I've been working as a software engineer for a big company called Datadog. And I've been always working about data visualization. So basically, the idea of my work is always a little bit the same. I have some people coming to my desk. They have a data set like this one, for instance, and they ask me, hey, what do you think I should do with my data? And next question is, how can I draw that? And so I've spent a lot of time talking with people trying to answer this question, and I came with a process, and I often talk about it, and I made a website about it to guide people like you to go to the right chart. So yeah, usually when they come to my desk, they already have an idea, like this beautiful 3D bar chart, for instance. And the idea is to find something a bit better. And I'm sure you're gonna have some idea to improve this one, hopefully. So when you have to find the right chart and make it look good, you have two steps. The first step is more about design, like what is the right chart I should use? How is it supposed to look like? And the second step is how to build it. Today, we're gonna talk mainly about the first part about design, but we're gonna talk a little bit about code too at the end, no worries, because it's still a R meetup. So yeah, let's talk about how to find the right chart for your data. My process is split in 4 parts. The first part is to list all the chart type you can do, all the possibilities. Then the second part is, among all the possibilities, which one should I choose and why? The third step is know that I have the right charts. What are the main caveats that I should avoid to make sure I'm not like doing one of the big mistakes of data visualization? And the last step is then to build it and understand which tool to use. So I suggest we start with the first step of the process. By the way, if you want to interrupt me, if you want to ask any questions, everything is okay for me. Like it's more a discussion than just a talk. So feel free to interrupt if necessary. So the first step is what you can do. So it's very important to understand that you can have the same data set, do several charts, and they are not going to tell the same story. As a metaphor, I really like using this image. Here we've got this image of a mom, a lion mom that is currently eating her daughter. That's kind of scary. Let's say it's a scatter plot. And we can have the same thing, but with the opposite view. And actually, she's not eating the baby, but just carrying him. I'm just trying to illustrate that with the same data set, you can have 2 different stories. So it's important not to stick to only one chart type, but to explore everything that is possible to make sure you're not missing anything in your data set. An example that is a bit more concrete. Here you've got a scatter plot. So you've got some data points for the x-axis and for the y-axis, and that's what you have. Like basically a very big amount of circles, and it's pretty hard to understand the story here. If you use another chart type, which is called the 2D density chart, you can get to this instead. So here, the story is a bit better. We see that there are 3 groups, and that's a much more impactful, insightful chart. So yeah, very important when you have a data set, try to think about all the possibilities that you have to draw it. So let's try to do a little exercise together. You have this data set. It tells you about a few countries and how much weapons these countries sell. So let's say you have that on your desk. What kind of chart type would you do? Take a few seconds to think about it. And if you have some idea, you can like speak, or you can even write it in the chat if you want. And we can see what ideas you come with. All right, so I've got a bar chart. I've got a horizontal bar chart, which is a pretty good idea. Bar graph, which is the same. A line graph, probably doable, but not sure if it's the best idea since we have different groups. A Voronoi chart. Oh, there are some good ideas.
Tree map.
A tree map, yeah, very good idea too, thanks. Horizontal bar chart. I really like that a lot of people are saying like horizontal. That's a bar chart in this kind of situation are much better if they are horizontal. Bar chart and ordered, very good answer too. Circle packing. All right, I think we're reaching all the possibilities, almost there. Okay, a few more seconds. A bar chart, but using like pictograms instead of bars. I'm not a big fan of that, but a lot of people do it, so that's an option indeed.
A donut chart.
Sorry?
A donut chart. Donut chart.
A donut chart. Very good point.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. So as you can see, yeah, a pie chart. I was waiting for this one. That's definitely something you can do. As you can see, we are like 60 people interested in like statistics and data analysis and data visualization. And it still like takes some time to list all the possibilities, and some of them are still missing. So what I'm trying to show here is that it's not like obvious what to do with it. It takes some time to think about it, and it's very important to think about it. So what are the possibilities? We've been talking about the bar chart. And indeed, when you do a bar chart like that, it's very important to rank groups. Like that, it's very easy to understand like what's the rank of each country. And it's much better to do it horizontally, because then it's easier to read the labels. So that's a bar chart. And when you can do a bar chart, you can also do a lollipop chart. Basically the same thing, but using one line and one circle instead of a bar. And it can be very useful when you have a lot of long bars, because if you have a lot of long bars, one on top of each other, it does like a strange visual effect that is like not good at all. So in this case, it's much better to do a lollipop. So that's another option. When you do a bar plot, you can do a circular bar plot. It's less accurate, but it's a bit more eye-catching. So it can be very useful sometimes. You can also do a tree map. Here, each country is shown as a rectangle, and the bigger the rectangle, the bigger the value. And that can be a very helpful chart too. When you can do a tree map, you can do a circle packing chart. So it's the same idea, but instead of using rectangles for countries, we're going to use bubbles. So yeah, that's like a little part of the list. You can also do a donut chart, and you can also do a pie chart. And in the chat, there are like some other ideas like choropleth map, for instance. Like there are so many options. So once more, what I'm trying to explain here is that there are many options. It's not easy to find them. And it's very important when you have a data set to take some time, think about it, and try to list what you could do. That's the result of something that people did during a conference. Basically, they asked people in the database conference if they knew about a specific chart type and if they had made it already. So if I take the box plot, for instance, about 70% of the people made one already, and almost everyone knew about it already. But more interestingly, if we talk about the chord diagram here, almost no one made one already, and like less than 10% of the people even knew what it was, and it was a database conference. So there is a question in the chat. That's a dumbbell chart. Dumbbell because it looks like dumbbells, and it's like a variation of the lollipop plot chart. It's very useful. So yeah, what I'm trying to explain here is that even people interested in data visualization, they don't know all the chart types. So it's very important to improve your graphicacy, like your knowledge of what chart types are, to make sure you're not missing an opportunity to create a good chart. Let's do the same with another data set. Oh, sorry, that's the same one. Here we have like one column with the country and one column with the value. But now let's do almost the same thing. We have like one column with a category and one column for the value, but this time we have several values for each name. So for instance, probably which one? Almost certainly it has the number 98 and another time 98. So basically the idea here is that they asked to people in the street, if I tell you likely, what does it mean for you in terms of probability? Is it more like 0% probability or 100% probability? And people answer. And so for the same word, we have several answers. So same question here. What could you do with it? I'm answering the question as long as you're thinking. If there is like a website that tells you all the chart types, that's exactly what I'm trying to do in data2viz.com, and I'm going to give a demo in a few minutes. Any idea on how to visualize this dataset? I'm not sure you can do a double plot with this chart, but I might be wrong. All right, so this dataset is slightly more complicated. I have several values for each group and several groups. A box plot, thank you. That's like the most common answer to this dataset usually. Interval plot, I'm not really sure what it is. And we could do a cumulative distribution plot, I guess. One for each group. So I'm going to keep going. So here we have several observations per group, one categorical variable and one numeric variable. So yeah, the most obvious thing to do is to do a box plot. So here, for instance, we have likely, and we can see that the median for likely is about 70%, and that's the distribution of what people said about likely. And if we check almost no chance, most of the people say it's around 0%. And if we check like almost certainly, most of the people say it's around 100%. So that kind of makes sense. And what's interesting too is that about even, like a lot of people agree that it's about 50%, but probably not. That's not very accurate. People don't really know what it means. There is a very large distribution. So that's the box plot. But when you do a box plot, you can also do a distribution chart with several shapes, one per group. So about even is here, almost no chance that's the distribution, and so on. It's pretty hard to put all the groups on the same chart because all the distributions are gonna overlap one each other and it's gonna get messy. So if it works, if you don't have too many groups, but if you have too many groups, then it doesn't work. You can also use this technique called small multiple, where you split the window and you create one chart per group. That allows you to compare the distribution of many groups. It's very useful. You can also do what we call a ridgeline chart. So here, same thing, we have the distribution, but we display them one on top of each other with a little bit of overlap. And we rank the groups, and it makes like two very beautiful shapes where we kind of see mountains. Somebody said like violin plot in the chat, and that's definitely true too. When you can do a box plot, you can do a violin plot. So what I'm trying to say here is that knowing all the possibilities is always the first step you should apply in your process, and that it's not easy at all to know, like first, it's not easy to know all the chart types, and second, it's not easy to go from one data set to all the chart types. And that's why I've created this little project called Data2Viz, where basically I drive you from your dataset to the possibilities. I've made this decision tree where you describe your dataset at the top and it leads you to all the possibilities. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to give you a quick demo of this website. Here we are. So that's from Data2Viz. I created it a few years ago. And that's the decision tree. So let's say in my data set, I've got some numerical and some categorical variables. Maybe I have like one numeric and one categoric. That's like what we've been talking about. And if I have only one observation per group, then the table is looking pretty much like that. And I can do a box plot, a lollyplot, a donut chart, a pie chart, a word cloud, a tree map, circular packing, or a waffle chart. And if you click on it, you're going to have some more information about what it is exactly. So let's say I'm interested in the lollipop plot. I can also like click on it and I'm going to have a full explanation about what it is. And I'm going to tell you like why it's useful, when you should use it, when you should avoid it, what are the like variations. So for the lollipop, for instance, the double plot is a variation. And interestingly too, you can have like the R code for this chart. So basically, if you take this and copy, paste it in RStudio, you're going to get this exact chart. and you're ready to go for your data analysis. I'm also going to talk about the common mistakes that you should avoid for this chart type so it can be useful. And last but not least, I'm going to give you a link to the R graph gallery, the Python graph gallery, the React graph gallery, and the D3 graph gallery. That's 4 websites I've created where I give you a lot of examples of that kind of chart. So yeah, in case you don't know the React graph gallery, the R graph gallery, I can give you a short demo. It's a website that looks like that. You've got like all the chart types I know. And if you're interested in, I don't know, building a tree map, for instance, you click on it and you've got some examples. They always start from very simple and then go like more and more to stuff that are more and more complicated. And I always have some examples that are coming from other people on the web who are doing some great visualization, like for the Tidy Tuesday challenges or stuff like that. There is a section about like all the packages I love that are very useful for data visualization. So for instance, like in R, I love ggplot2, plotly, markdown, patchwork, this one for theming, and Palantir for the colors. But there are also like a bunch of packages you should really know if you're into data visualization because they are very useful. And one last thing I wanted to show you is the best section. So I spend my time browsing the web and talking to people about R and data visualization. So each time I see a great viz, I create a small tutorial about it and I add it in this section. So that's basically like all the awesome air charts I've seen in my life that are concatenated together in this section. And if you're interested in one, you can click on it, and you're gonna have a tutorial about it explaining you how to do it. So let's say I want to see this one, for instance. You've got the full code. Usually it's a lot of code, and it explains how it works. So yeah, if you like creating charts with R, data2viz.com and rgraphgallery.com can definitely be useful to you to create some great charts. That's the end of my first little demo. I'm gonna go back to my presentation now. All right. Time is running, so I'm not showing this one, but something I wanted to say here is that there are some chart types, but data visualization is infinite. You can definitely combine different chart types. You can invent your own. You can use like any shape on screen to display some information. So it's very useful to know the main chart types because then you just have to create variations. But if you're interested to go further, I really like this website, xeno.graphics, that shows you a lot of weird charts that sometimes can be very useful too. So that was the step 1 in my process. So now we have a data and a data set, and we have a list of all the chart type that we can apply to it. Hopefully it sounds good to you and everybody is following the presentation. I'm gonna keep going with step 2. The step 2 is among all the possibilities, which one should I choose and why? In my opinion, there are several questions you should answer to be able to make the right decision. You should talk about you should try to understand what question you're wondering. You should think about exploratory versus explanatory visualizations. You should think about who's reading, about the data itself, if you want to do it interactive or static, and if you want it to be accurate or eye-catching. Let's go a bit more in depth. So we've seen that I've got like all those logos on my website, and you've seen that they all have a color. They all have a color because the color talks about in what case you should use it, what answer you're trying to get from your data set. If you want to show a distribution, if you want to understand how a variable is distributed, then you're going to have to use the yellow color. So in this case, it's going to be the box plot and the violin plot that display the distribution of several variables. If you're interested in evolution, then it's going to be the blue color. And we don't see it here, but it's more going to be like a line chart or a string graph or a area chart. And so on. Purple is going to be for maps, and the dark red is going to be for flow, and so on. So let's go back to our example. Here we've got this data set about weapons, and we've seen that we can make a bar plot. Bar plot is the green color. It's very useful for ranking. Here, it's very obvious that United States is first. And if I ask you like, who's the biggest weapon seller between South Korea and Spain, it's gonna be very easy to check the graph and understand who's on top and who's at the bottom and understand the rank. However, if I ask you what's the total weapons sold by the United States, that's going to be very complicated to answer. Basically, you've got this long bar here, and you have to understand what's the size of this bar compared to the sum of all the other bars. And that's pretty much impossible to do. That's like very hard. So this plot is very powerful for ranking, but it's very weak to understand what we call the part of a wall, to understand what's the proportion of one bar compared to the other. Now let's check the tree map. So the tree map is red. It answers a different question. If I take the United States here, it's pretty easy to understand that this rectangle represents about 1/3 of the big rectangle of the total. So I know that's like that's 30%. However, if I ask you the ranking between Spain and South Korea, that's going to be very hard because I have to compare the size of this rectangle with this rectangle, and that's not obvious at all. I wouldn't be able to answer. So what I'm trying to explain here is that the bar plot is going to be very powerful for answering one question, and the tree map is going to be much better to understand another question, to answer another question. So once you have your list of chart type, it's very important to understand what's the question, what you're trying to show, and thus what's the best chart to use. So yeah, that was the first thing to think about. What's the question? What answer do you need? Second thing, what are you trying to like understand your data set, or are you trying to communicate about it? This chart can be very powerful to understand what's in the data set. Basically, it shows you the relationship between 4 numeric variables. You have the distribution of them here, and you have the relationship between each pair here. That's very powerful, and you can spend ages trying to understand each of every little chart that you see here, and you're going to learn so much about your data set. However, if you show this chart during a conference where people just have 30 seconds to understand your message, they instantly going to try to read the chart and then not going to be listening to you anymore. So if the idea is to communicate one result, that's not going to work. If the idea is to explore your data and understand what's in there, it's going to work very well. So try to understand what you're trying to do. Are you trying to convey a message, or are you trying to visualize, like to understand your data set? That's not the same kind of chart that you're going to have to use in both options. Then something else that you have to take into account is who's going to read your chart. Some people know a lot about charts, and some people, like if you take people randomly in the street, they probably don't know about what you're showing. This graph is a hierarchical edge bundling. It's a chart I really like because it's beautiful, but it's pretty hard to understand what it is. Actually, it tells you about a lot of groups that have a hierarchical structure, and then it links to people if they are connected whatsoever. It makes this kind of beautiful shape. But if you show that to someone who knows nothing about chart, it's not going to tell anything to him. So in this case, it's better to do something a bit more simple. So yeah, keep in mind who you're talking to. There is one other thing you should be careful about, is like how the data is looking like. So that's a line chart with several groups, and that's what we call usually a spaghetti chart. So basically there are several lines and they are all very messy, and it's very hard to follow one. So it's very hard to understand what's the message in this chart. But then you can do like pretty much the same chart, but the data is very specific. And so it works very well. Here it tells you about the infant death rates. And because this rate is declining over the year, all the lines are sorted very well. And so the message works very well. And we see that it's decreasing from 1921 to 2021. it works very well. So it's exactly the same data set. It can be exactly the same question, but still one data set is going to work and one data set is not going to work. So it's important to try it anyway. Something you have to think about is interactivity too. So for instance, when you do a bubble chart like that, should you make it interactive or not? For a bubble chart, it's very, very handy to make it interactive because it's very frustrating when you have a trend like that to have some outliers and not being able to understand what are those data points. Here, I'm so glad I can hover over a dot and understand that this dot is given and have a bit more information about it. So sometimes interactivity can be very important for your chart. Another question is, do you want your figure to be very accurate, like for a scientific publication, for instance, or do you want it to be beautiful? For instance, if you want to post it on social media. On social media, people are going to spend less than 1 second looking at your work. If it's just a very usual bar chart, maybe they're just going to keep scrolling. So it's better to do something that is eye-catching. So this is what we call a circular bar plot. It's less accurate than a usual bar plot, but it kind of looks good. So if you need some people attention, it can be worth checking that kind of beautiful charts too. That's like an example of a animated circular chart where basically it takes about 1.5 minutes to have the complete story of what's happening. Like if you click on it, you will have my slide later on, by the way. If you click on it, it's something animated and it takes forever to show you the whole story. I kind of hate that kind of chart because my time is precious. And so spending 2 minutes staring at the chart to have the complete story kind of drives me crazy. But it worked so well. Like it had so much attention from people just because it was interactive and eye-catching. So it's definitely something to keep in mind when you have to choose your chart type. Talking about like eye-catching charts, that's a arc diagram. Not always the most accurate thing to do, but once more, it kind of looks good and can catch people's attention. And yeah, that's a connection map I did with R a couple of years ago. And yeah, I was just checking like where people talk about surf and where they come from. And it allows me to understand where people travel for surfing. Once more, like I'm using a NASA background, which doesn't add anything to the accuracy of the graph, but it makes it look better and yeah, retain more people attention. So that was the step number 2. So step number 1, we had a list of all the chart type we can make. Step number 2, we have a few like stuff to decide which one is the most appropriate. And then we can go to step 3, which is to understand what are the biggest data viz caveats that you want to avoid. There are a few like very common mistakes in data viz, and if you avoid them, there is a big amount of chance that your graph is going to be powerful. So let's take a look. Can you see anything wrong in this chart? Once more, you can like talk or use the chat to talk about it. If you see anything that could be improved.
Total is not 100.
All right, numbers are wrong. 3D is bad. Pie chart is not the right choice.
Multiple pies, partitions.
Sorry?
There is multiple pies.
Yep. Too many colors, definitely. Several times the same color. All right, I think you've said them all more or less. So yeah, it looks pretty bad. We have so many times the same color. Percentages are not adding up to 100. It's in 3D, so T's slice looks bigger than T's one, even though they have the same value. All that kind of thing. So this one is pretty famous. Like everybody knows that a 3D pie chart is bad nowadays, which is very good news. But do you know why the pie chart is often cited as a bad chart? Let's talk about it a little bit. Here we have three pie charts. can you see the trend here? If I ask you like what's the story in these data sets, what can you tell me? I'm gonna leave you like 30 seconds to think about it. Look at it closely. There is a strong story. Yeah, some people get it. All right. Now I show you the same thing, but using bar chart. So here on the first group, it's increasing from A to E. Second group, it's kind of stable. And third group, it's kind of decreasing. Some people saw it in the chat, so congrats. But I think you all agree that it's much easier to see the trend here using a bar chart than using a pie chart.
Yeah.
And there are always a lot of discussion about pie charts. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm not a pie chart hater. Like if you have 3 groups, something obvious to show, a pie chart is gonna work very well. People are used to it, so they're gonna understand it very quick. So it can definitely be a good option. But if there is something complicated to show in your story, be very careful about pie chart and use something else instead. And yeah, hopefully this image can help you prove your point if you have this discussion with someone sometimes. Second question, what could be better here? Scale is awful, all right. Vertical order, all right, you get it. So that's probably one of the most common mistake I see on chart types. So it's kind of obvious, but people always forget about it. This chart is very disappointing because if I tell you like what's the 5th country in the ranking, it's very hard to tell. Instead, it's so important to rank your data because it gives you a much clearer story about what's happening. So order your data. Very, very simple to do, very efficient. Okay, example number 3. What's wrong here? Oh, that's true. The median bar is pretty hard to read on the dark purple. I agree, but that's not what I'm thinking about it. Labels. Oh yeah, doesn't convey number of observations. I really like that. All right, so this one is very common too, and people, especially in academia, love box plots. And indeed, they are very powerful. But look at the same data set now with all the individual data points put on top of the box plot. That's what we're seeing. This group has a lot of data points. This group has a lot of data points too. And as you can see, there is a bimodal distribution. There is like one group here and one group here. And that's something we had no idea about using the box plot. This group just has a few data points, and this one just a few data points too. So the problem of the box plot is that it hides the underlying information. You see a box, but you have no idea what's going on behind the box. So it's very important when you do a box plot to always show all the data points like that using this technique called jittering. So jittering means that you take a point and you randomly put it a little bit on the left or a little bit on the right, and like that they are not overlapping one each other. And because of that, like you have a much better picture of what's going on. You've got the summary with the box, but you also know in depth what's happening. And something I really like doing too is adding the number of observation here where the label is written. If you have too many data points, then it doesn't work because you have too many small points and you can't see anything anymore. So if you have a very big sample size, what you can do instead is doing a violin plot, because with the violin plot, you have the exact distribution. So you're gonna know that you have a bimodal distribution here, and you can add like the sample size here on the axis, like that you know that this one has a very small sample size. So be careful with box plot. It can hide the real situation. Another one. Do you see what's wrong here? Oh yeah, in the chat somebody talks about rain cloud plot. That's basically half a violin plot on the top and some data points on the bottom, and it works very well too. You can check it out. I love it. Very good point. All right, back on Two's bubbles. What could be better here? Yep, some people get it. So here, this bubble here is about 5, and this bubble here is about 14. But that's very inaccurate because this bubble looks like much bigger than this bubble, and it's supposed to look only 3 times bigger. So that's a very common mistake. Basically here, the size is proportional to the radius, and here the size is proportional to the area. So that's the right way to go, and that's the wrong way to go. If the size is proportional to the radius, then the area is going to be much bigger because it's square the radius. And so that's going to be misleading. It can be useful to like hide some real information. So each time you're doing a bubble chart, make sure that it's the area that is proportional to your value, not the radius. We talked about this one already. So I'm not gonna ask you the question, but that's what we call a spaghetti chart. And the problem here is that we have many lines, and it's very hard for me with my eyes to follow one line, see where it goes, and then goes to the legend to understand what's the name that goes with this line. So that can be very frustrating for the reader, and that's something you should really avoid. But do you have any idea, any alternative to offer to make something better than a spaghetti chart? All right, if you do an area chart, but put all the areas on top of each other, it's gonna be messy too. Ridgeline plot is for distributions usually. It's not for evolutions like that. Yeah, a streamline could work. That's true. And using facets, that's a very good answer, in my opinion. That's the same as small multiples. Choose one name and highlight it. That's exactly it. So you get it. Let's keep going. One of the first thing you can do is try to understand what's your story. Let's say you're interested in just like the evolution of the group called Amanda. What you can do is put all the lines in gray, like that you've got like the general story about all the baby names. And then you highlight just one group, the one for Amanda. And then it's very obvious to understand that Amanda had a boom at this time of the century. And that's not the same as for all the other babies' names. So that's one way to go. Something else you can do is to use small multiple or faceting. That's the same thing with an area chart. So here we are splitting the window, one small chart for each group, and that works pretty well. And you can even combine two techniques. Here you have all the groups in gray and just one group that is highlighted, and that's very powerful because you still have the whole story, but with the specific story of Emma here. And that gives you a very good idea of what's going on for each name. And the good news is that it's pretty easy to make it with R. So feel free to check data2is, there is the code for this chart. I'm going to try to accelerate a little bit because I'm very late. That's a bar chart, very common mistake. When you're doing a bar chart, never cut the y-axis because here we're going from 65 to 77%, and it looks like this bar is twice as big as this bar. So that's very misleading. That's a very small overview of all the data viz caveats that exist. So I would like to give you a very short demo once more of another section of the data2viz website. So there is this section called caveats, and that's basically a collection of all the mistakes, all the caveats that you should avoid. So we've been talking about ordering your data. We've been talking a little bit about cutting or not the axis. We've been talking about the spaghetti chart, but there are so many others that you should check too. You have to be careful about overplotting, Dual y-axis charts can be very misleading sometimes. You have to be careful with circular bar plot because they're not always accurate. I've tried my best to list like all the very common mistakes that people do when they're creating a chart. If you have like 20 minutes to spend to improve your data viz knowledge, that's probably the best thing you can do. Because if you avoid all those mistakes, you have a very like you increase your chance to make a good chart in the future. So definitely check it out. It's data-2-piece.com. I will share all the links at the end of the presentation, by the way. That's it. I'm gonna go now to the fourth part and last part of my presentation, which is like, no, we know what to do, we know what are the big mistakes, but how do we do it? And I would like to give you a little tour of like all the database tools that exist to create a chart. Basically, we've made only 20% of the job. We know what we want to do, but now we have to build it, and that takes a lot of time. There are some tools that are very easy to use, but they are very limited. And there are some tools that are very hard to use, but that are very flexible. And you have to find what's the best for you. The first group of tool I want to talk about is Excel. Excel is very easy to use. You can make a chart in just a few seconds. It's very powerful. To be honest, I love it. I use it for a lot of things, but it's probably not the best thing you can use for scientific reports and for anything that is truly important. I know you all know what Excel is, so I'm not going to tell more about it. The second group of tool is tools like Data Wrapper or Tableau or Jump or ClickView. Basically, it's tools where you're going to use your mouse to drag some data, pick some options, and you're going to get a pretty chart at the end. I'm a very big fan of Data Wrapper. In my opinion, it works very well. And if one day you have a clean chart to do, but you're not very good at R or Python, to be honest, you should definitely consider using it because you can save a lot of time. I've seen a lot of researchers in my life spending days of their life building charts with R when doing it with Data Wrapper could have been a good option. So I know a lot of you are programmers, but you should consider those options too. That being said, I'm a programmer, so I never use them. What I love is coding. When you love coding, you can go to the third group, which is R and Python mainly, but it's all other tools like all other programming languages like Julia or MATLAB too. But R and Python are definitely like my favorite. We're going to talk about it more in the future. And then there is the last group, which is JavaScript. So basically with JavaScript, it's a bit different than with R. You're really going to take like a pencil and draw on your screen. And you're going to say, I want to put one circle here, one line here, one annotation here. And then when I click on this text, I want to do that exactly. So it's much harder to do. It takes forever, but it allows you to have a great level of customization and to create some crazy viz. So harder, but more flexible. I would like to show you very quickly an example of what you can do with JavaScript, because I know that you all know how to make charts with R, but maybe you don't know what to do, how we can do it with JavaScript. So let me show you very quickly. That's the project I've been working on today. So here I've got like a map with some bubbles, and when I'm gonna hover a bubble, I've got like the other bubble that are disappearing, and I've got a name that's appearing here. I've got some buttons. When I click on it, it's gonna update the chart, and I have full control on the animation and on what's happening when I click on a button. Here I've got minimap, so if I click on it, it's gonna update the chart too. So that's the kind of thing that will be almost impossible to do with R, and that's doable because JavaScript allows you to do absolutely everything you want when it comes to interactions. That's another example. What you can do also is like adding some text and create some links between the chart and the text. If I click here, I'm going to highlight just one group on the chart. Yeah, last graph, always the same idea. Clicking on the text is going to update what's going on. Full interactivity, full control on the design. I love it, but it takes forever to build. But yeah, I'm not showing that to brag or anything. It's just to like make sure you understand what is the landscape of the database tools that exist and which one is going to be the best for your use case. Back on my, there is a question about how long it took me. It took me 2 days to create the web page you've just seen. 2 days of work, but there was a lot of like data wrangling, data cleaning, and stuff like that too. All right. Last, talking about tools, there is one last thing I would like to talk about, but I don't know if I'm running out of time or not. Can I keep going, or am I out of time?
Oh, you're not out of time. We still have so much that we still have to 6:30.
All right, cool. So I keep going.
Yeah.
We can talk about short libs. There is a comment, but I don't really like short libs because you lose all the flexibility that you have with JavaScript. But that's something we can talk about at the end of the talk with questions. So yeah, something I would like to talk about is that we have bridges between the world of Python and R and the world of JavaScript. And there are like 3 main bridges, and they are Shiny, Quarto, and HTML widgets. HTML widgets, they are used to create some interactive graphs with R. So basically, you're calling some JavaScript code, but with R, and that's very handy. Quarto allows you to create some reports from R, and Shiny allows you to create some web application from R. I'm not a big fan of Shiny, but I would really like to show you quickly what you can do with Quarto and HTML widgets, because I find it so powerful and I love it so much. So I'm gonna try to do a very quick live demo. I hope it's gonna work, because you know what it is when you do a demo. It's always a mess. Let's go for it. I'm gonna open RStudio, and that's the thing I love the most about R. You can do File, New File, Quarto document. It opens this window, and we're gonna call it Meetup Demo. I click on Create, and I've got this. What's this? I've got a header here. I've got a sentence with a link. And that's actually just a text file, right? That's the way it looks when it's a text file. I've got some title here, and I've got some R code. And the magic is gonna happen now. If I click on this little render button here, it's gonna save it on my laptop. It's gonna read this document, transform the sentences like that, transform the link in a real link, transform the title in something that looks like a title, and give me the answer of the R code. I know most of you know what Quarto is, but for more beginner people, I really have to show that. So that's pretty awesome. It means that you can analyze your data, click on one button, and have a clean report directly. Now, what's very important to understand is that you're basically building a small website here. Since it's a website, it means that we can add some interactivity in it. Let's go back to Quarto. I'm not gonna type it, but I prepared it already. So instead of saying 1 + 1 here, I'm gonna make a simple chart. All right, so I'm loading a few libraries. Then I'm reading a table that is like stored on the web. And then I'm doing a ggplot. All right, and I can add a little hello here just to show you that there is really something happening. I click on render, it's gonna read my code, and hopefully it should work. So yeah, that's how my report is looking like now. I've got the code that is here, I've got the result of the code, and it's starting to look pretty good. And now let's start to use HTML widgets. There is one that I really love because it's magical, and it's called Plotly. So if I go here, instead of like calling P, which is my ggplot, I can do ggplotly of P. And instead of having a static chart, it should make a interactive chart. Let's see if it works. I go back to the report. And yeah, it looks pretty much the same, but now it's interactive. So you see, I've got the tooltip appearing here. And I can zoom on a specific area. If I double click, it's gonna unzoom. And there are a bunch of options here that I can use. So that's just one more line of code and the graph is interactive. So it can be so useful sometimes. One last step, there is one package that I really, really like. It's called DT. It allows to make some interactive tables. So instead of doing 2 + 2, let's do an interactive table. So I just have one function to call here. All right, it worked. And now I've got a table here with my data set. And if I'm looking for versicolor or Virginica, you see I've got like Virginica here now. And if I want to filter my data set, I can use this to filter my data set. So what I'm trying to show here is that you can create some very amazing reports directly from R. What you can do then, once you have this report, is to host it on GitHub. If you don't know what GitHub is, it looks like that. It's like a place where you have your homepage and you can store all your code. So that's my homepage, and you have projects. Projects are called repositories. So I've got 77 repositories here. I've got many of them. And so that's all my work. All my websites are here. Everything I do is on GitHub. And so what can I show you? Yeah, there's this one called Advanced Quarto. And that's like exactly what you have on your computer, but it's a copy on GitHub. And so here I've got my Quarto document, which is called index.qmd. And when you render it in a website, it makes the index.html. And what's very magical, in my opinion, is that once you have this index.html on GitHub, it becomes a website. So if I click here, that's it. I've got a report that is a website. And I can take this and share it with my colleagues, with my boss, with my friends, with whoever. Is there a limit of the number of visits you can have to the website? No. My art graph gallery is hosted there. I've got several thousand people per day, and it's free and it works perfectly. So no limit at all. And something I would like to show you too is what kind of report you can build. If you go a bit further with Quarto, like there are so many customizations you can do. And yeah, that's one clean report. You've got the title here with a little like background to make it more obvious. You can add some metadata about the document with like a link here to who I am. You can add some warning messages. You can add some links. You can hide the code so people can choose if they want to read the code or not. You can add images. We talked about the DT table here. You can add some notes on the side. There are so many things you can do. That's an interesting interactive scatterplot where you can zoom on a specific area. You can add some equations. You can put some tables one beside each other. You can do pretty much everything because you're building a website. Is Quarto similar to R Markdown? Yes, it's pretty much the same. It's based on R Markdown. It's just more powerful. It supports more languages. It's just the same thing, but better. How to convert that index.html to a web page? You don't have to convert it because index.html is a website. Any .html file is a website. Shiny, we can talk about it later because it's a big topic. And that's it. And yeah, how to send it to people? Just send the link. That's the link for this document if you wanna take a look. I've been working in academia for several years. I've been working in a tech company for several years, and I love those tools, and so many people could benefit them. And because of that, I created an online course called Productive or Workflow. It looks like that, and it explains pretty much how to do what I've just done in front of you, but better. So basically, there are several sections. The first section tells you how to clean your code. The second section is like all the best practices you wanna hear about R. The second section is about how to make it a report. The third one is how to make the report interactive and how to polish it. Like it's a bunch of all the best tips and tricks I know to make your report stunning. And the last module is about Git and GitHub, like how to make sure you will never lose your work, how to make sure you can collaborate with your colleagues, and how to make sure you can transform your quarto document into a website. So if you're interested, it's called productiveorworkflow.com. That's the project I'm working on currently. I'm very glad about what I've built. So yeah, feel free to take a look. That's pretty much what I wanted to say, I reckon. So back on my presentation. So yeah, that's it. That's the mini course I've built about 2 stools. And yeah, I'm finally reaching the end of my presentation. Sorry, it was a bit long. I'm Yan Holz, so you can find me on LinkedIn easily. You can find me on Twitter too. I'm very active these days. My name is Art Gallery on Twitter. And yeah, that's my website, data2viz.com. We've been talking a lot about it. There is one I didn't have the time to talk about. It's called datavizinspiration.com. It's basically like a Pinterest page, but that talks only about DataViz, all my favorite projects. And it's very good to have some inspiration. And all the galleries, yeah, we talked about it already. Something I would like to add is that I recently left my full-time job. So I'm now an entrepreneur, and I'm gonna give more and more talk like this. I'm gonna work on my course, do some stuff like that. Because of that, I would really like to improve myself as a speaker and to know a bit more about what you think about my work. So I'm gonna share with you this link. It's a link where you can provide a testimonial about this talk. So feel free to tell me if it's been helpful for you, what could be better. I'm very keen for any feedback really, and I will really appreciate if you could feel something in this little form. It takes less than 2 seconds. And yeah, I would like to finish the talk by being very thankful for LADs for inviting me. I really love talking about all of that. Thanks to you for coming and listening to me. And I still have some time though. So if you have some questions, if there are any topics you would like to talk about, I'm very open to anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think there's still one more thing you've not dealt with, the Shiny. There was a question about Shiny, kind of.
Yeah. All right. So Shiny is a big topic, and I know I'm gonna have to talk about it. It's very hard for people to understand the difference between Shiny and R Markdown or Quarto. Basically, the idea, I'm gonna try something. Maybe it's not a good idea, but I'm gonna try it anyway. So when you're doing a Shiny application, you have a server here. And this server, it knows how to deal with R. And then you have what you call the client. The client is actually like the browser. So that's like a Firefox, for instance, or Safari. All right. And so what you're doing is that you're always communicating between the server and between the client. All right. So basically, you connect to the Shiny application. You click on a button, like you say, I want to see group A. So browser is going to send an information to the server, and the server is going to say, oh, you want to see group A, let's do something. It's going to think a little bit and then tells you the answer for group A. And then you're going to say, oh, I want to see group C actually, and so on. And so you're going to have this loop like that. The problem here is that you need a server. And having a server, it costs you money. And it also makes everything very slow because R is slow. So each time you're going to click on a button, it's going to take a few milliseconds or a few seconds to give you an answer. And sometimes that's necessary. Like, for instance, if you want people to be able to log in on your website, they're going to put some passwords and stuff like that. You need a server. Or maybe you have a very big amount of data that you have to deal with. So the data needs to be on the server. But now, let's say that you have just like one histogram to draw, and you have 3 groups. What you can do is to make what we call a static website. The static website, it looks like that. So here, we've got this like infinite loop, all right? So this is happening many, many, many times. And so on, all right? With a static website here, what's gonna happen is that you're gonna connect to the application. The browser is gonna ask the server, I wanna see the website. The server is gonna send the whole website. And then when you're gonna click on a button, instead of calling the server again, who's gonna do some R stuff, everything is gonna be computed by the browser using JavaScript, because your browser, it knows how to speak JavaScript, but it doesn't know how to speak R. And so the loop is gonna happen here. And the difference is very big because everything is gonna be much faster and you don't need a server anymore. When you need a server here, you have to pay the RStudio server. It costs a lot of money, and you have to make sure the server is working for a long time. So you probably have to pay some money each month for your project. Here, the server can be GitHub. So you just put your work on GitHub, and then everything is gonna work forever for free. And it's very easy to deploy. It's very easy to maintain. So that's why I really, really like static websites. I'm not saying that Shiny is bad, because sometimes you need a server. Maybe you want to run a very complicated data science model and you need a server for that. But what I know is that a lot of people are using Shiny app when they could be using static websites. And that's a shame, because their life would be much better with static websites. And by the way, when you're using Quarto, what you're building is a static website. And that's why you can put it on GitHub and use it very, very easily. So sorry, my answer was a bit long, but that's my 2 cents on Shiny and why it's very awesome, but we should be careful about it and not use it all the time. And by the way, I really love Shiny. A few years ago, I discovered Shiny, and that's why I became a web developer, because I love building applications for the web.
Awesome. Okay, I've been looking through the chat, and it's been a lot of gratitude. We're really grateful. It's been okay. I think
Is
we
there
still have to use
any other?
HTML
Oh, sorry.
HTML widgets. There's a question. Do you use HTML widgets on static websites?
Yes, very good question. So when you're using HTML widget, you're basically writing JavaScript, but you don't know it. And JavaScript, you remember, JavaScript can be run in the browser. So basically in R, you say, okay, I'm using the plotly function. And what you're creating is some JavaScript code that can be used in the browser. And that's why HTML widget can still work on static website and can still work on Quarto documents. So the answer is yes, and that's why it's so powerful. And you can do a lot of things with HTML widgets. What you can do, for instance, is like linking two graphs together. That's something a lot of people will use Shiny for. Let me show you. There is this package. I don't know if you know it. I really, really like it. And it's called ggiraf here. And am I gonna find an example here? Yeah, you can do that. Like, that's two different charts, but thanks to ggiraf, they are connected together, and you don't need Shiny for that. You don't need a server. Everything can be done in the browser. That's very magical, isn't it?
That's awesome. Okay, beautiful. I think I wouldn't be able to say thank you, everybody. Thank you. It's been a lot of thank yous here. I think if we have to analyze everything, we have more than 80% of thank yous here. Insightful and very interactive, very clear explanations. No, it's been wonderful feedback so far. Yeah, a lot, a lot. And it's been very interactive. And we really appreciate the large turnout, almost 70 participants from around the world. And from our local community here, we want to say a big thank you. And to everybody joining us from around the world. We're really grateful. Oh, thank you so much, Tosa. Thank you. We're still having a lot of thank yous here. So,
Yeah.
Yan, it's been a wonderful time. I think, like we say here in our local language, Shokinyoboyogi or something, it's, it doesn't have to be that long, but the little we had here was really awesome. A lot of interactivity. People are interacting with you, and it's been wonderful. Seriously wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. We're really grateful. So, yeah, I want to really appreciate you. And I want to use this opportunity to wish you all the best in your new endeavor and business consult. We wish you all the best, and we're really grateful to have the honor to have you here. Thank you so much. So it's a big clap there. Thank you, Lothar. Thank you. Thank you. Please kindly
Well,
check out the courses that Yan has. So I think we'll really benefit from it. And the website, I've benefited a lot from it, getting even codes, getting codes and all of this. So I think it was a really good one having you here. So thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm really grateful. Yeah, all the best. All the best, Yan. We every is a lot of well wishes there. Thank you. So this will be where we would call it a day. I think if we don't have any questions, because we'll still have all these thank yous coming in. So no questions.
Hi, I have a question, please.
yeah, sure. My pleasure.
All right, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I saw a particular tool that you have created called R Color Finder. So, and I want to ask if you have the same thing for Power BI. Thank you.
All right, I can show you quickly what the color finder is for people who don't know what it is. So that's a little tool where you have several charts like that, and you have something like 2,000 or 3,000 color palettes that are available. And so when you choose one color palette, it shows you how it's going to look like on your plot. And so it's very convenient because you can use your keyboard and go very quickly from one palette to the other, and you can choose the one you like. You can say like, oh, I don't want like qualitative palette only, and then they are all going to be qualitative. You can click on it to have like the detail of the colors. You can like you can say, oh, I've got like I'm colorblind, I don't see properly, so how is it gonna look like for me? And you can even have like, oh, you can even have a bug. I have to fix that. And yeah, when you click on it, of course, you've got the code for it. So the question is it going to be available for Power BI? So for Power BI, you don't have to code. So I guess you can just use it like on the R graph gallery, for instance. And then when you have the palette that you like, let's say it is one, you can click on this button and you've got the list of the colors here. So I guess then it should be easy in Power BI to use those colors for your chart. So I don't think I'm going to create a specific tool for Power BI because you can use this one pretty much the same way. Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
No worries.
Thank you. So sorry, my network just went off there. So do we have any other? I think we'll keep Yan here for as long as we want because it's getting interesting. It's the excitement is still there. So, but we have to call it a day to make the recording more useful, and I believe everybody would benefit from it. We're going to share the links, all the resources that have been used during this presentation. We'll get his presentation as well. The links to his courses, everything would be shared via our YouTube channel. So I've shared the link here. So you can reach us on the YouTube channel. Let me see. Okay. So this is our, can just add that to YouTube channel, then you'll be able to get directly to our YouTube channel. So all these resources are going to be available there. So Yan, we wish you all the best and we're grateful for your presence here. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.